Art is a $2 trillion asset class. What LiveArt is doing is to migrate this enormous asset class to blockchain.
It's kind of the holy grail, how to figure out art on the blockchain.
The reason that it's possible that we can do it and nobody else could is that we have a product called LiveArt Analytics that takes a quantitative lens at the art market. You could look at an artist's market cap.
Are you guys the first to ever do something like that? I've never heard of a market cap for an artist.
I believe we are the only ones doing it. We mark everything that has ever sold, about 10 million pieces of art, and then out of that, we construct pro forma price history of every painting, of every artist, of every price movement, and so on.
And that's one of many things you guys do.
That is true. If you go to our website, liveart.io, you will see there is something there for you. Either it would be the games, or it would be the shards of famous paintings by famous artists, or it could be NFTs and ordinals from anywhere in the Web3 landscape.
Can you talk about how an artist that's very successful in the traditional world would then go into Web3?
This LiveArt Studio entity that we have within our company specializes in how to present an artist properly to every community within the Web3 space. Art is the Trojan horse that can bring the next billion people into Web3.
Will this be the biggest company you've ever created?
Undoubtedly.
Is that what you set out to do?
Yes, I always do. The timing is amazing, and we are waiting for this next wave that will fill this infrastructure with wonderful content and use cases, which will come.
Hey, I know investing in crypto is scary. It takes a real leap of faith because there are so many scams, rug pulls, and bad actors out there. It's a dangerous business, which is why 95% of people lose all their money. Well, that's why I created the London Real Investment Club, so you can access the hottest deals on the planet and use the crypto bull market to create the generational wealth that you deserve. Join my team of over 100 people from around the world that are making millions of dollars behind the scenes investing in blockchain, AI, Web3 games, DeFi, Bitcoin, and more. Don't miss out. Click the link below to book a call with one of my team now. But hurry, this bull market will end soon.
I know investing in crypto can be scary. That's why you gotta join the investment club. Pull the trigger. Let's do this.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is... This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Boris Pevzner, the entrepreneur, computer scientist, and blockchain expert. You are the CEO and co-founder of LiveArt, the world's largest ArtFi ecosystem with over 10 million unique active wallets. LiveArt drives the migration of the $2 trillion art asset class to blockchain, bringing the next billion users to Web3 through gamified real-world asset ownership. You previously founded Collectrium, a global digital platform for managing, discovering, and trading art, which was acquired by the globally renowned Christie's auction house. Art as an investment has outperformed stocks, gold, and real estate over the past 3 decades, and your goal is to democratize it by bridging the gap from the legacy art world to a global crypto audience through tokenization and fractionalized ownership. Ultimately, you believe that blockchain is creating a better world by giving everyone the opportunity to become a digital property owner and participate in the Web3 revolution. Boris, welcome to London Real.
Thank you, Brian. Great to be here.
It's great to have you here. I want to start by saying that LiveArt is one of our portfolio companies here at London Real Ventures, the world's first media-powered investment firm, where our mission is to transform the world by investing in cutting-edge Web3 and AI companies while giving our partners marketing exposure across the London Real media platforms and academies. We heighten awareness, create customers, and build communities by leveraging our global audience and extensive network. Boris, we are super excited to be part of this journey with you. I was telling my team the other day, I am so bullish on LiveArt. So let's jump in and tell us, what is LiveArt?
Great, thank you, Brian. So LiveArt, let me start by talking a little bit about the art market, just a bit. So art is a $2 trillion asset class. Very few people realize how enormous it is. And so that includes just art that is potentially tradable, not art that's in museums, but things that could potentially be traded. So things in people's collections, in galleries and auction houses and so on. So $2 trillion. So what LiveArt is doing, what our mission in life is to migrate this enormous asset class to blockchain. So that's it. It's not a huge story, right? But in the process of doing it, this is where it gets even better, bring the next billion users to Web3. Because we think that art is this wedge, is this vehicle, it's a social phenomenon that everybody can relate to and that can really drive this adoption of Web3 that all of us in the crypto universe and the crypto community are striving for.
You just said art is a social phenomenon. That's a really fascinating way of thinking about it. And again, you've worked deep in the art industry. That's what I think makes you super unique, because there's a lot of people in Web3 that are trying to do this, but they don't have the background you have. A social phenomenon, can you tell me what that means? Because I think when people think of art, sometimes they think of something that they don't have access to. They think of the auctions at Christie's and the dinosaur thing recently went for $70 million and they think, oh, that's those people, but I maybe don't do that. But it's not really that, because everybody has a relationship with art, right?
For sure. And I think that especially in Web3, that is becoming more and more true. And so things that we love in Web3 and sometimes make fun of, and sometimes invest in. So like, for instance, memes, meme coins, meme art, just collecting memes, making fun of memes, enjoying memes, that's art, right? So it doesn't have to be the Picassos and the Warhols. That's one side of the art spectrum. The other side of the art spectrum is memes. And there are lots of things in between. And there is lots of creativity, there are lots of creators, there are lots of people who are both on the creation side of art and on the, for lack of a kind of, not to be too crass, consumption side of art. So the consumers of art, the enjoyers of art, the collectors, the traders, the speculators in the case of memes and meme coins, all of them are really part of the art community. And I think that an underappreciated phenomenon that is happening right now is that there is a whole, like outside of what we would call the legacy art world, there is a whole new art world that is being born. And that art world is powered by Web3, by blockchain. And that's a completely new thing. It's a new community. And that community is already doing art-related things, as in visual, audio, and other things that the legacy art community may not even recognize as art yet, but it will.
Let's talk about that, because on your Twitter feed, there's a picture of you and Beeple. Now, Beeple is this, I guess he's a digital artist who became very famous by selling, I think at the time was the most expensive NFT, which was his 5,000 days, or a digital artifact of, I think, 5,000 of his creations. Is that more of what you mean by that new world, or does he kind of bridge the two?
He bridges the two. I think he's one of those, there are those watershed figures in art history, I guess in any history, but in art history. He's one of those figures. There's a person who brought digital art into the big leagues. So suddenly digital art is selling at auction houses, is selling at galleries, but in a big way, at scale, with lots of zeros, right? So it's really the person who probably more than anybody else has legitimized and validated digital art, which then kind of expresses itself most naturally in the blockchain and Web3 format. Why most naturally? Because before Web3, before NFTs, before ordinals, before all of these things, digital art was hard to commercialize it, because you could replicate it infinitely, just like any other digital file. And it's that it's blockchain basically that gave art the ability, digital art, the ability to become a legitimate is the wrong word, an equal art form with all of the other art forms that are out there.
Okay. Now, I was in this space in 21 and I saw the NFT craze and I tried to figure out what was happening. And a lot of people said, oh, this is just silly and it's a bubble. But it's like, no, it's a human phenomenon. And so what were these people trying to do? And I remember, Boris, I gave my daughter at the time, she was 17, an NFT. And I was the coolest dad on the planet. And I got more goodwill for that than if I would have bought her a car, I think. And I was giving it to people and it meant something to them. They're like, oh, I look at it every day, I hold it. And I was like, there's something more going on here than just some silly bubble. There was a new way of humans expressing themselves. This was a new medium. There was, like you said, provenance. There was, you could prove ownership. There was something going on. Now, obviously the NFT was kind of a craze. It was up, it was down, but now we still see now memes coming. What did you make of that NFT craze? What did we learn about ourselves? What did we learn about blockchain? What did we learn about digital art in that process? Because a lot of big auction houses embraced it, and I couldn't believe it. It was like when I think of Christie's, I think of something that's been around for hundreds of years, and they're super old school, doing oil paintings, and all of a sudden they were involved in NFTs, and I was like, wow, they embraced this as well. So, what did you see in that world?
Great question. There are so many angles that we could explore answering it. First of all, I have an 11-year-old who makes NFTs now.
Wow!
And then he displays it on a digital frame that's sitting at his desk. So he makes them, he enjoys them, he hopefully will, with permission, trade it with his friends. We'll see about that. But this is something that the young generation has embraced totally. It's like, to them, this is not something exotic. This is just part of their life, along with all the other things that they use, the TikTok and so on. So this is like this culture of creation that is now married with the culture of ownership. So you could create digitally, before, but you couldn't own that digital file because it just goes and gets replicated in millions of copies. But with NFTs, with digital, with blockchain specifically, you can now own it. So this marriage of creative and ownership is where the magic happens, because finally you can commercialize your digital creation in a profitable way. So, but going back to your question, what did we learn about ourselves? I think that one thing that we learned is that the history keeps repeating itself. And the history is basically, whenever there is new technology, usually it outpaces its use cases, and then people infuse that technology with all sorts of weird use cases, and that creates a bubble. And then that bubble bursts because those weird use cases are no longer, interesting to people. And then it comes back to earth, and then the real productive use cases start filling that technology. Right. And I think that's what basically happened to NFTs. It got filled with all sorts of stuff. People got excited that now you can commercialize digital creations through this ownership that NFT and blockchain enables. And then they started filling it with all sorts of weird stuff. And then some of that weird stuff became, I would say, validated art. I think that some of it is going to survive and pass the test of time. But the majority of it will not, and that's why the bubble burst. And so now there is a new generation of content that is quality content, that's validated content, that is the content that is going to take this vessel, which is the NFTs, and kind of start filling it with quality things, right? And so I think that's basically what we learned, that the history, it always works like this. New technology, lack of use cases, strange use cases, then crash, then real use cases. So it's sort of the same. I would, if I may, I extend this to Web3 and to the whole crypto universe as a whole. I think, generally speaking, it's been overbuilt, right? We have built amazing infrastructure in Web3 and in crypto. We have built all these wonderful chains, and some of the blockchains do this, others do that. They all do different things, and they're all wonderful. We built wallets, we built, all sorts of DeFi tools. We can now trade, we can now do all these things with this infrastructure. But there is not much to trade. There is not much to do. There is a lack of real world use cases. So what happens, people start filling it with other things like meme coins or whatever is the thing of the moment that people invent. I love meme coins, I invest in some of them myself, so nothing against meme coins, but I think this phenomenon, this pattern of filling the technology that's been, in a sense, is ahead of its time with use cases that are of questionable quality, applies to Web3 and the crypto universe more broadly. I think our task, and this is basically where we come in, is to create this new quality content, create these new quality use cases to fill this wonderful infrastructure with.
Yeah, I'm having a flashback to that old quote that necessity is the mother of invention, but I've also heard other people turn it around and say invention is the mother of necessity. And so I think we're seeing a bit of that. And I was around for the dot-com bubble, and I was the CFO of a company called Luxury Finder. We were selling luxury goods on the internet in '99. And you saw, I think, a little bit of that as well. Mm-hmm. Everybody was excited. There were 18 different search engines before Google, and everybody was piling resources in there, but nobody was ready to use it. Nobody was really ready to use the internet to buy things and do these things. And so it crashed. And of course, 5, 8, 10 years later, now everyone's using it.
Absolutely.
And so it feels like something very, very similar.
Something very similar. So I'm very bullish on it. I just think that we're in this interesting place, right? After kind of like where the technology is already amazing, but there's not much to do with it yet. And it's coming, right? There are people building it. We're building it. There are lots of people who are going to fill this technology with super interesting content, use cases, and just things to do with it. It's going to be great.
And you believe that art is potentially going to bring that next 1 billion users. And I want to ask you how, but I first want to say I'm having flashbacks to conversations I've had in this room, in that chair with Yatsu of Animoca Brands. And he always reminds us that culture is such a huge asset class that we forget about sometimes. And so, everything that we wear and we do and we choose, if you think about all the products in your life, the actual utility of those things we buy is probably 1/10 of the cost we pay, but we buy a brand because we kind of want to express ourselves or express allegiance, and that's all that culture. And that value is all locked up in what we do. And if you separate it, it's a huge industry. And it's part of who we are as humans to kind of express ourselves and show our interest. And it reminds me a lot of what you're doing with art and live art. And I know Animoca's backed you guys. Mm-hmm. And so maybe I shouldn't be surprised by that. How do you believe that art is going to bring that next billion people in? And how are you guys going to be able to crack it? Because it's kind of the holy grail in this space, how to figure out art on the blockchain.
Yeah. First of all, it's definitely worth cracking. So it's just in itself, just art, cultural goods in general, trillions and trillions of dollars in value, and as an asset class, if you'd like to use those terms. But just the art part of it is the $2 trillion. This is an enormous chunk. It's certainly worth cracking. But why? So why would that work? How would that work? And I think like everything else, it'll come in stages. And some of those stages are already behind us and some are ahead of us. So let me give a few examples. So this NFT craze, that was the beginning, right? So that's when some of the very famous artists, some of them we brought to market ourselves, brought to Web3 ourselves, they chose to go into Web3. So why did they choose to go into Web3? I'm going to use an example. Yumin Jun. So it's one of the top 10 artists in China, one of the top 50 in the world, who is very, very successful, has been selling at Christie's and Sotheby's at $4 million, $7 million paintings. Very successful artist. So why would an artist like this, not just success, actually, let me go back. How do we quantify the success of an artist? You could quantify it qualitatively, right? So in major museums, the art is just very, very generally recognized as iconic. You could also quantify it quantitatively, and we sort of specialize in that, right? So we have a product called LiveArt Analytics that takes a quantitative lens at the art market. So you could view any artist like as if they were a brand or a company. You could look at an artist's market cap which is the sum total of all of the artworks that that artist has sold based on the current prices, right? So that would be the market cap of an artist. So the market cap of Hume in June, for instance, is $150 million. So it's a very substantial market cap. You know, if this were a company, that would be quite a sizable company. You could do other things, by the way, and if you go to, say, our website, liveart.io, you will see, you know, for every artist, there is a market movement, there is a momentum, there are all the financial indicators that you would expect for any other asset class, except applied specifically to art.
You have a ticker at the top and everything.
We have a ticker on the top.
It's kind of
as
AI
well.
powered. And are you guys the first to ever do something like that? I've never heard of a market cap for an artist.
As far as I know, yes.
Wow.
And the reason for that is a little bit subtle. Sorry, we're going on the tangents, but that's cool. I like tangents.
Me too. That's what real conversations are tangents.
Yes. So the reason that it's possible that we can do it and nobody else could is that you know, art fluctuates in value a lot. So you could have bought a Basquiat, say 20 years ago for, you know, $10,000, and now it would be worth $20 million. Made up numbers, don't check me on that. So it really fluctuates a lot. So if you just look at, and it also sells infrequently.
Right.
So if you were to just see what things have sold in the past and add them up, you would get a random number. That's not what it's about. It's about what all of those things that have sold in the past are worth today. So you have to mark every single piece of art that has sold in the past by a given artist to market as of today. And that's very difficult to do. So that's where all that AI and machine learning comes in. So we mark everything that has ever sold, about 10 million pieces of art that have sold in the past, to market every day. And then out of that, we construct, you know, a pro forma price history of every painting, of every artist, of every price movement, and so on. So essentially, that's what enables it. And yeah, I believe we are the only ones doing it. But it's like, then the reason for that is that it's very difficult to come up with a current market value of everything that has ever sold. If you can do that, then you can aggregate it into various art-related products like indices and so on. But just doing that one thing is very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like that alone as a company would be extremely valuable.
Yes.
And that's one of many, many things you guys do.
That is true.
Right.
But it all has a reason, because, you know, I keep saying art is an asset class, art is an asset class. But what does it mean? Well, an asset class is something that trades, that in addition to having an aesthetic value, which art, or societal value that art clearly has, also has a commercial value, it has economic value. So that's what makes it an asset class. But if you want this asset class to be commercially active, then people are going to want to trade it. And if people are going to want to trade it, you want to have market data. Just like with any other asset class that gets traded, be that equity, on real estate, or whatever that the case may be, you want to have good quality, real-time market data in order to trade that asset class. Yeah. So that's why we have the data product. Not just because we love data, which we do, but really to support all of it's the foundation of this edifice that sits on top of it, which is different things, different use cases that we can do with this asset class, in particular in Web3.
Okay. And so getting back to that artist you mentioned, there was this Chinese artist that had a 150 million market cap, for example. You talked about them going digital, and they did that, I think, with you. Can you talk about how an artist that's very successful in the traditional world would then go into Web3? And there's also some pitfalls potentially there as well. And that's that's a part of your business, I think, is bringing those people online. And I was wondering if you could tell people a bit about that, because it's very interesting, and you know it better than anyone that I know.
Yeah, I like to think about it from the point of view of the artist. And I think that's probably the best way, because especially when we talk about the pitfalls. So imagine that you are an artist like this with a huge market cap, right? 150 million, that's your market. So you have a $150 million market, and you are still creating work, and you're selling into that market. There are certain price levels in your market. So the last thing you want to do is to do something that will damage your market. Because now, you know, if you damage your market and it goes down by half, next day you produce an artwork, it will be worth half of what it was before that. That will be really, really bad. You don't want to do that.
Right, because that piece of art will be worth a half, but then when he goes to LiveArt, all of his art will be marked to market down, and his market cap will go down to 75.
We don't want to think about it. That should not happen. That never happens. We don't want to happen, right? So if you don't want it to happen, and yet the artist wants to do something different, like for instance, enter Web3, how do we make sure that it doesn't happen? That this Web3, that the entrance into Web3 extends the artist's market incrementally rather than in any way damaging it. So like if you're an artist, this is what's going through your mind. Not like, oh, I'd like to experiment with some digital. Yeah, sure, artists love to experiment and they love new media and they love to do innovative things. Of course they do. But first and foremost, let's make sure it doesn't damage my existing market. Right? When you're an artist at that level, this is kind of how you think about it. So therefore, failure is not an option, right? If you enter Web3, you have to enter it properly, right? You have to enter it in a way that extends the existing market and doesn't damage it. So the methodology that we use with artists of this caliber is that we think of a digital edition, be that NFT or ordinals on the Bitcoin chain, and whatever the format may be, digital edition on a blockchain, as an extension of their print market. So every artist usually has a market for their unique paintings, for prints, and potentially other media, sculptures, whatever else they work in. So if there is an edition of, say, ordinals or NFTs, an edition of 1,000, you can probably most closely, and it's a generative edition, meaning that every single one is different, it's unique. So you can most directly compare it to a print edition in the let's call it legacy art market. Okay. A print edition of also 1,000. And it's not exactly one-to-one correspondence because the print edition is, every print is the same, except for the condition and other things, but more or less the same. Whereas in the digital on-chain world, usually it would be different because it would be generative edition, everyone is different, so it would be like a different format. But more or less, they would be comparable. So you would like the prices to more or less correspond from here to here, right? Basically, with this, for the same edition size and other parameters. So that's one. So the pricing, it has to be properly priced. Number two, it has to be offered ideally to a new audience that is incremental to the existing audience, so that it doesn't cannibalize the existing market, the existing audience, the existing economics of that artist. That audience is plentiful and eager in Web3 to receive new, interesting things, especially by brand name artists whose works they already may have seen in museums, because in the case of Yom in June, it's like all museums around the world, like this imagery, this iconic imagery that this artist has given to the world is quite universally recognizable. So those newcomers now have the ability to own a piece of it, which they would not be able to do in the legacy art market, right? Because they don't have access to it, but in the digital they do. So that's two, incremental. So basically, let's enumerate it again. Number one, artists like to experiment with new media. It's just a joy for every artist. Number two, they want to make sure that the pricing in the digital medium and in the legacy art market are consistent. And number three, that the audience is incremental, right? Incremental to the existing user base or existing collector base. So these are some of the ideas, some of the main ideas for how to properly bring an artist to market in Web3. But then then there are some technical questions. Which chain? Because there are so many different chains, right? In what format? What should be the edition size? And so on and so forth. So what we like to do, and let's just go back to the same case of Yom in June. What we like to do is we like to develop the journey of an artist as the artist enters this new space. So with Yom in June, first we did an NFT edition. So it was kind of like PFP-esque. It was very accessible. It was very, it was sort of iconic because it used the iconic imagery of that artist. And that was his first entry. Now at this point, he got an audience, right? So the audience of tens of thousands of people, maybe hundreds of thousands that have been exposed to it, and 1,000 of them were the lucky owners of the artworks. Then we thought, all right, we did other projects, other artists, and then that community, Yom in June's new digital community, came back and said, well, actually, we would like a print. We would like to have a print of our NFT to, put on the wall. That was completely unexpected, right? Yeah. We thought this was a digital community, completely, in no way connected to anything physical. But here they were. And so about a quarter of them wanted to have prints. So we went back to the artist and said, all right, how about we actually do a print edition? He said, fine, as long as it is priced in line with my print market, because I cannot damage my existing market.
Right.
So we did that, and then about a quarter of the NFT buyers bought the prints. So that was the second. Now we have, an even more expanded footprint of this artist within this now crossover Web2, Web3 community. Then, ordinals came about and became super large, right? Super big earlier this year. And so then it's like we thought, well, that would be amazing to actually make this artist to be the first established artist in the ordinals community. And so we did that, and that was, really, I think, beautifully executed. 1,200 ordinals, also iconic in the context, in various very Web3 native contexts that also did very well. And now that's a whole different community for the same artist, because Bitcoin maxis and ordinals people are non-overlapping with the Ethereum people as a sort of different people. So now the community is expanding for that artist, right? Then the runes came along, we did the same thing. Now we are going to put this artist into a metaverse. And so there will be an avatar of that iconic face that will be running around the metaverse, doing all the metaversey things. And so that'll be a new community, the metaverse community. And then we are going to, probably in about a month or so, tokenize and fractionalize one of his large paintings, those expensive ones. And so those, we call them shards, are going to be going to provide ownership experience of a physical painting to an even larger digital community. Right. So basically, this is how we like to work with artists, right? It's like we develop this community step by step, part by part, in different chains, right? In different metaverses, physical and digital. And there is one more thing that I forgot to mention, it'll be the last thing on this kind of quasi case study, that the Genesis ordinal of the ordinal set that we have put together for this artist then got auctioned off at Sotheby's. So it came full circle, right? And came back into the auction houses that are already dealing in physical artworks by the same artists, selling for millions of dollars each. And now this ordinal came back into the same, essentially, distribution channel. So I think it's very, very kind of interesting for an artist to enter the space as long as they do it properly, they do it comprehensively, they do this multi-distribution channel, because very few people understand Web3 as a distribution channel, because it's like every wallet type, every chain ecosystem, every little piece of the blockchain ecosystem is part of the distribution channel. Right. So if you have an artist to present to the Web3 universe, we have to utilize all the available distribution channels. Why only put them on Ethereum and that's it? No, there's lots of other places, right? And lots of other communities, and most of those communities are non-overlapping. And so basically, that's our approach to taking artists to Web3.
And that Genesis ordinal is the person that bought it just independently decided to take it to Sotheby's and auction it off.
Yes.
That has nothing to do with you.
And Sotheby's kind of liked the idea so much that they put it on the cover, which is a big deal, of the catalog for digital art that they were selling at the time. So it was actually lot number 1, and did quite well above estimate.
What did it sell for?
Well, it's an ordinal, so it was a small piece, right? And we have 1,200 of those. It sold for 6,000 USD. Okay.
Wow. And wow, I just didn't know Christie's would be right on that cutting edge in knowing.
It was Sotheby's.
Sotheby's, yeah. Sorry. And knowing what they are, and, to be aware that was such a phenomenon.
No, they follow the trends. Okay. So when ordinals, those trends, they go in waves. Yeah. And when ordinals has its first wave, I think many more waves to come, the auction houses were on top of it.
Wow. So in addition to everything else you do, and we're still going to get to more at LiveArt, you have intellectual property, a massive amount, on how to onboard high-level artists into this ecosystem, not just a little. I mean, that's a crazy case study with multiple generations. And so now you've already done it with multiple artists. So now you know what has worked in the past, mm-hmm. or what could work, and mm-hmm. you can Now, is this almost like a kind of an incubator for you, or a separate area of the company that can take an artist and, I mean, I don't know, what do you call that? Is it an incubator?
Great question. We call it LiveArt Studio.
Studio. Okay.
So, and that's because we help. There are a lot of pieces that go into, well, as you know, based on this case study is already evident, but it's not just like what the distribution channels are, but also what will resonate the most with each one of these distribution channels. Like if you look at how we presented the artist to the Bitcoin Maxis and Ordinals community, and how we presented the same artist to the Ethereum community, completely different, right? Completely different visually. It was sort of elaborated in a very different way. And there is a reason for it. There's different communities. They have different expectations, and you have to understand them. So this LiveArt Studio entity that we have within our company specializes in that, in how to present an artist properly to every community within the Web3 space.
And so if artists are interested in that, they contact you, and then you review who you want to work with and who you have the time to work with, and you kind of take it on a case by case.
Yes, it's a very laborious process. So we launch about once a month.
Okay.
An artist like this, right? An artist of this caliber. I'd love to do it more often, but for now, sort of it's difficult for me to imagine how I would. It's extremely laborious working with artists. It's not like, you know, the artist just says, go do whatever you want. No, you have to collaborate with the artist. The artist has the last word and everything. I mean, these are world famous artists. So there's a lot of iterations, and it takes a while, but it's worth it.
Yeah, it's amazing you're doing that. Let me ask you one question about the fractionalization and the tokenization of that art. That was your kind of final iteration, at least currently. I'm sure there's going to be more. But say you now go kind of full circle back to that real world piece of art. It's a $4 or $7 million painting, for example, and now you fractionalize that, and now the digital people own it. Do you foresee ever anything in the future where I might get something physical that would represent my fractional ownership of that, like a print or something that represents? Because I've always heard the talk of fractionalized ownership of art, and part of me, Boris, has to say that I don't know if people would be satisfied knowing I own 1/1000th of that thing, and I might want to feel it or see it or have some digital representation. Maybe that's an NFT, or maybe that's a printed home that says I'm not 1 of 1,000, but 1/1000th of that. I don't know if you've thought about that or what you think that the future might be.
100% agree with you. What we are doing with our tokenization product is creating the experience of ownership. It's not the experience of speculating on the price of the underlying asset. That's not interesting for many reasons. What people are interested in is the experience of ownership, right? If you're owning a little shard of a Warhol or a Basquiat or a Kusama, that experience needs to be elaborated. And so really our fractionalization product is about that. It's about the experience of ownership. And you know, some of the components of it is that, number one, how you acquire those shards, and you acquire them in gamified ways. You do not just come into some boring site and you buy like a piece. No, there is a whole experience about you selecting or randomly getting assigned a piece of the painting, and that piece of the painting, depending on where it is, it actually may have different values. Like right now, we're going to do a famous Warhol painting, famous Warhol print, his Superman print. And so the face of the Superman or the fist of the Superman are more valuable because more people want them, right? Than some background that is just uniform color. So that not every shard is created equal, and people compete in the primary sale for the right shard, or they want to get shards that give them like some kind of an outline of the head of the fist. And if they don't get it, then in the secondary market they can try to buy it from somebody who does have it, and then assemble that piece that they want, right? So that's part of it. But then the more they kind of aggregate of that painting, the more perks they get. So at some point they can get a digital NFT that represents some portion of it. At some point they can get a physical print or some kind of a physical memento, or doesn't even have to be on the wall. It could be a credit card, anodized aluminum, kind of thing that is, by the way, indestructible, just like blockchain. You cannot burn it, you cannot do anything to it. It maintains its color and maintains its shape. And so that's something else that you can keep. And it, of course, points through a QR code to the exact place on the blockchain that proves that you own it, right? So there are different ways to create these experiences of ownership. And, the way that I describe the product that we sell to my team internally is that this is what we're selling. We are selling the experience of ownership of this physical asset. We are not selling a financial product. Definitely not. We are selling an experience of ownership.
Why do you say definitely not?
Financial product?
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's enough. I think that it's a nice component of the utility of the experience of ownership, right? It's like going back to art, the legacy art market.
Right.
Very few people buy art simply as a financial instrument. Some do. There are companies that kind of specialize in that. Some do, but very, very few. The vast majority of people buy art for a whole bunch of reasons, of which the financial motivation is a part, but it's not the biggest part, right? So they want to, there is the experience of ownership, there is the bragging rights, right? Because like every piece of art is unique. If you have it, somebody else doesn't have it, and people love it because people love owning something that nobody else can. So there are multiple motivations, of which financial is one, but it's not the main one.
It feels to me that if you solve the ownership experience, then the financial thing is solved as well. Because if you make it to where someone really wants it and feels like they want it, then it'll tick the box for also becoming a financial asset, because then there's a real desire and demand.
What the London Real Investment Club actually does for you, it gives you the keys to open that door to the inside deals. In the last 3 weeks, I've participated in 3 incredible deals: a layer 2 Bitcoin protocol, an incredible AI protocol. The deal flow is beyond what I expected. I don't think I've ever seen a model like this that just gives average folks the opportunity to be behind the deals, and that's exactly what we've done. Not only that, you get to hang out with Brian Rose every week. And for me, that was huge, because I look at Brian as somebody who's not only an expert in the space, and I think is on the leading edge, but just the leading edge of thought with London Real and the work he's doing there. To anyone who's taking a serious look at this, I know it's a big decision. It was a big decision for me and my family, and it is one of the best decisions I've ever made. So I wish you all the best, and hope you come join us.
For sure. I think that there are other ways also to turn it into a financial asset, and we are going to do that in the future. So what that means is that once everybody has these shards, right, nothing prevents people or somebody like us of taking like all of the shards of all of the Warhols that we have ever fractionalized and putting them in a pool, which essentially is a fund. And now there is a Warhol fund across all of the Warhols that have been fractionalized by us, and then that fund tracks the performance of the Warhol. So now it becomes a tracker of that artist. Or you could mix and match different artists into composite funds, like a contemporary art fund or an American art or British art. So, and then what happens through the magic of blockchain and all of the protocols that have already been created, you don't have to do anything new. You can not just spot trade those, but you can also short them. There could be derivatives. There could be speculation of all sorts of different interesting kinds. So all of that is coming. That's in the future. Right. But first, we need to bring this asset class to blockchain. The more, the better. There is $1 trillion worth of it that needs to be ported over, that needs to be migrated over. So our goal is to get as much of it to blockchain as possible. Some of it will come as an extension of careers of existing artists who are just entering the digital space anew, like a new medium. Some of it will come as fractionalization, tokenization of physical masterpieces that are already out there in the secondary market or in the primary market in the case of living artists. Some of it will come from emerging artists. So we do free mint a day now. Every day there is a free mint by an emerging artist. And so that's emerging artists are now kind of through the same platform, through the same system, are entering blockchain as well. We also have educational products. We have one of the top 15 Telegram games in the world right now. And that game is getting millions of people into the habit of looking at art, guessing the artist, and associating or guessing a price. So it's like every day, it's almost like a clicker game, similar to a clicker game a bit. So you reveal, the more you tap, the more the picture gets revealed. And the sooner you can guess who the artist is, the more points you get. So it's sort of gamified like that. And what it's trying to do, what I'm trying to do with it, is
to continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.